Indonesia seems to be stuck at 5%. The president wants 7%. Why isn't it happening?
I wouldn't say that we're stuck hustling that. But I would acknowledge that we have yet to hit that inflection point, right? We have not yet ignited a new cycle. We haven't hit ignition yet, unlike some of the other countries around the region.
What will it take for the ignition to get started?
I think we have to appreciate the enormity of the drag on the Indonesian economy. I think number one, we never fully appreciated just how exposed we were to commodities, right? In my view, we underappreciated the indirect effects on financial liquidity and purchasing power from what on the surface looks like a small or manageably sized commodity sector. The second thing that we never fully appreciated is the size of our infrastructure gap. As President Jokowi just pointed out, when we upgraded the airport in Manado, North Sulawesi, suddenly the number of Chinese tourists to Manado went from 12,000 per year to 12,000 per month. So infrastructure made all the difference, and upgrading the airport was a small thing. But to me, that's a perfect story or illustration of how critical is infrastructure.
Indonesia needs billions of dollars of foreign investment, and the World Bank says what stands in the way is uncertain regulations. We talk about flip-flopping within the mining sector. We talk about how changes were made to the negative investment list, for instance, and investors are not comfortable with that. Will that change?
I think we definitely admit that the top complaint of investors is regulatory uncertainty, right? As many people know, I joined the bureaucracy, I joined the cabinet 2.5 years ago from the private sector, and I'm quite startled by how underdeveloped our policy-making processes are, right? So the way we formulate policy has fallen very far behind, the cutting edge, if you will. And the president's aware. The president's very, very aware. We started to put more discipline, more procedure into the policymaking process so that ministers don't willy-nilly just issue decrees with no prior notice and no transition periods, for example. But I think at the root of it is, I think we now have no choice but to move towards bureaucratic reform, right? Because the president is trying to move the bureaucracy from the mindset of a ruler, right, of an authority that tries to regulate and rule everything, to the mindset of a servant, of a public servant. How can we help? How can we serve? That's a very huge shift in mindset from a hierarchical, almost feudal, top-down, ruler mindset to a public servant, how can we help kind of mindset. That's a huge transition.
I mean, in your own words, you said that there's too much bad policy around. When you take a look at the implications in the market, we have a rupiah that has been smacked, one of the worst performers in Asia this year, and a stock market that's lagging behind all its Asian counterparts. What message would you like to send investors, and how will all of that be rectified?
I would say that the headline figures don't tell the whole story, right? So, 5% GDP growth, that's an average number that masks big turmoil underneath it, big transformation in the economy. As President Jokowi just pointed out, our tourism sector is growing 25% per year. At the same time that certain mining sectors, certain commodity sectors are shrinking 15% per year. You don't see that looking at just a 5% average. Or, for example, the rupiah. Obviously it's a convenient headline figure, the exchange rate. But, for example, it doesn't tell the whole story about booming e-commerce and online transaction and fintech, financial technology. So I think, I guess one answer, what are solutions? I think technology is a big solution, is a big answer. I think, to be very blunt, not the most diplomatic thing for me to say, but a lot of people are moving online. They're escaping excessive government regulation and bad policy by just moving online, where regulatory reach is much more difficult, right? And that's a danger. That's why there's such urgency to deregulating, because if we don't deregulate fast enough, if we don't make it convenient and friendly enough to be in the formal sector of the economy, people will move to the informal sector, and increasingly there can be a very sophisticated informal sector which is online.
Truth be told, there is suboptimal policy. Where is that being reflected the most?
Oh, gosh.
Where do you begin?
No, I think it would be unfair to highlight any particular ones, because I think we're all guilty across many ministries and agencies. Again, it's a system-wide problem. And again, it is rooted in this mindset where we're the ruler and you are the ruled. And that's just a outdated, obsolete mindset. Government needs to be public servant and supportive, and rather than talking a lot, we need to be great listener, and that's what President Jokowi is. But again, it takes time, but personally, I think there's been startling progress in a mere 3 years. I think President Jokowi has really changed the tone, changed the discussion, changed the flavor and the frequency of the atmosphere around bureaucracy and authority.
Earlier, I talked about the weakening rupiah. Which sectors in particular are being exposed the most, do you think?
Well, so far it's been manageable. And one underappreciated strength of the Indonesian economy is probably how balanced it is, how diversified it is. For example, foreign direct investment is running about 20% higher compared to before President Jokowi took office, right? And that's an annual flow. I can't take all the credit because, frankly, when the currency depreciated 25%, that made investment in Indonesia cheaper and more attractive, right? So I would say market forces are working, and the economy will respond, right? If we need to have more consumption, the rupiah will probably strengthen, boosting domestic consumers, right? But if we need to boost our exports, the currency will probably weaken, and that will support the export sector. The good news is Indonesia has all of them, right? It's a very well-balanced and well-diversified economy, and notwithstanding poor policy on many fronts, it's still a surprisingly flexible economy. So the economy does respond reasonably well to shifts in exchange rates, to shifts in interest rates, and other market signals.